Hey guys, for today's video, we're going to start a new unit. We're going to start a unit on exponents. And so today we're going to be going over the basics of those. This is something that a lot of you probably already have seen. An exponent is something like this. So we have 2 and then a little 3 up there. That means the number 2 to the third. So if we're talking about an exponent is we call it a power or an exponent. And this represents the number of times a number or a variable, we'll talk about variables later, but the number of times a number or variable is multiplied by itself. So in this case, 2 to the third power, well, that just means that we're multiplying 2 by itself 3 times. So if we were to write that out, this is called expansion. But we've just said if this is 2 to the third, that's the same as 2 times 2 times 2. There are 3 2's. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So another way we can represent that, 2 to the third is just the number 8. Another example, how about we do like 3 to the fourth? So that would be 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 3 to the fourth, well, that is going to be 81. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27, times 3 is 81. So that's one kind of thing we're going to do. So that's the basics with positives. If we're talking about, we're going to move on to both negative numbers. So both if the number inside is negative, like if we have -4 squared, or if we have -3 to the third, we're going to talk about what happens with these negative numbers. So for instance, in this example, -4 squared, you need to think about multiplying -4 times itself. So in this case, -4 squared is -4 times -4. If you multiply -4 times -4, then we are going to in fact get +16. And in this example, -3 to the third, well, that is going to be -3 times -3 times -3. So -3 times -3 is +9, times -3 is -27. So I'm going to write down a rule. One of the rules that we can work with here, if you have a negative number, so if a negative number is being raised to an exponent, the solution is positive if the exponent is even. And the opposite is also true. If the exponent is odd, then our answer is going to be odd. And I'll show you kind of an example of that. So if you think about this, let's do -2 to the, we'll do 5. So you want to think about this. If we had 1, 2, 3, I wrote down 3, and I meant the third 2, -2. So if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all negatives, so 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. And now I don't necessarily need to make sure to pay attention to the negatives all the way through, but if I look at this, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. I know that 2 negatives multiplied by each other cancel out. So that means that these cancel, those cancel, and I'm left with 1 negative at the end, which means that my answer is going to be negative. So if we can remember this, if you have a negative number being raised to an exponent, you always need to just say, is the exponent even? That means my answer is going to be positive. And if it's odd, that means it's going to be a negative. So that's one thing that we can pay attention to. We're going to move on to another kind of thing with exponents. So let's say that we have we're going to talk about two other things. So the other things we're going to talk about are when exponents are 0 and when you have a negative number as an exponent. Both of them are going to come out to something a little bit strange. So first, I'm actually going to do something kind of strange. I'm going to show you just, we'll make a stack. We're going to write these on top of each other. 2 to the first, 2 squared, 2 to the third, 2 to the fourth. And I'm going to go through, it might be helpful to you to follow along, but I'm going to go through and I'm going to fill these out. So let's just go through, what are these? 2 to the first, well, that's just 2 times itself once, that's just 2. What is 2 squared? Well, that's just 4. 2 to the third, it's 8. And 2 to the fourth, 16. Now, if I asked you how or what would be an easy way to go move on and get the next thing, you might be able to say, well, I noticed that all of these are being multiplied by 2 as they go up. So I can notice times 2, times 2, times 2. So without doing any extra work, I can know 2 to the fifth, well, that's just equal to 32, because if this pattern keeps on going, I know that the next thing multiplying by 2 is going to be 32. Now, if I asked you beforehand, what is 2 to the 0? A lot of people think, well, 2 to the 0, I know that has to do with multiplying, or I have 0, 2, so that's probably going to be 0. And in this case, you would be mistaken. And I'll show you why. The reason that this is going to be something else, we can actually just think about this as, well, instead of multiplying by 2, we're going to do the opposite kind of thing. So instead of multiplying by 2 as we go up powers, so as we go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, we're going to go down powers. And how would I go from 32 to 16? Well, I can divide by 2, right? And 16 to 8, well, that'll get me, I can do that by dividing by 2. Same thing for the rest of these. So divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, all the way down. So if I asked you, what in fact is 2 to the 0? Well, what's 2 divided by 2? Do this again. 2 divided by 2 is, of course, 1. So that is what you would get. Now, we can actually continue this process. So let's do 2 to the negative 1, and 2 to the negative 2, and 2 to the negative 3. So we're going to continue the same thing, dividing by 2, dividing by 2, and dividing by 2. So for this first one, what is 1 divided by 2? We're going to write that as a fraction. Well, that is just 1/2. If we do that again, what's 1/2 divided by 2? Well, that's just 1/4. And what's 1/4 divided by 2? Well, that's just 1/8. So we can notice, first of all, we should notice that these all become fractions. And the second thing, I will also point out that all of these are equal to 1 over, so 2 to the negative 1 is the same as 1 over 2 to the positive 1. In the same way, 2 to the negative 2 is equal to 1 over 2 to the positive 2. 2 squared is 4. And 2 to the negative 3, well, that's the same as 1 over 2 to the 3. So if I asked you, for instance, we'll actually change from these 2's. If I asked you what is, say, 3 to the negative 4th, well, I wouldn't want to have to keep on going through and making this whole table and doing all that extra work. We're just going to say that is equal to 1 over 3 to the 4th, which is the same as 1 over 81, which is a lot easier to do than making that table and doing all that work out. So whenever you're working with negative exponents, this is what you want to do. You want to take that exponent, make it positive, and make a fraction with 1 on the top. And that's how you do it. And then you just solve it like that. Anyway, good luck on your homework. If you have any questions, come to my office hours and let me know.